My name is Prina Gerow. I was born March 23rd, 1932. I was born in Thunder Bay. They were born in Italy. I got married on September the 26th, 1955. My spouse's name was Eugene Gerow. Well, we knew each other as growing up, but we weren't going together for a number of years. We were all in our 20s when we started to go together. I have two children. Peter Gerow is 58 years old, and I have Kathy Gerow, 54 years old. I have three grandchildren. I worked when I was single in stores, and after I got married, I was a stay-home mom. And then later in life, I went back to managing a gift store for 10, 12 years, and then I started working as a hostess at Serendipity. Yes, I volunteer a lot in Rossport. Of St. John Bertram's Altar Society, I've been a member for at least 45 years. I've been president many times, and I'm still an active president today. That involves raising money to keep this little church in Rossport going. It also involves looking after the grounds and the building and maintenance. Oh, many memories. There was a lot of children my age when I was growing up, and it was certainly different in those days. My parents never owned a car, so the only way I ever traveled was by railroad, and in them days we had passenger trains, which was very handy because my dad worked for the CPR. I don't remember the beginning of them. I think they started in the 30s, but I certainly remember them in the 50s and 60s, yes. It was a lot of work. I was an adult then, so I always ended up working, never fishing. Yes, there was thousands of people that came, but I never took part as fishing in it. I always had to work. We made our own fun. We always had a skating rink in Rossport, which was a very big thing. And from the time in November till March, we skate. There was always a skating party, or we were always at the rink, and there was tobogganing, and we just made our own fun. We had no television in those days, as everybody else will tell you in Rossport, so we had to do our own thing. Technology, my parents didn't have a fridge till 1953 when the hydro came here to Rossport, so it was always an ice box, or you just bought daily at the store. You never were able to keep anything. There was a lot of recreation, but you made your own because there was no television, of course, no electricity, no television, no telephones. So if you wanted to communicate, you went to talk to people in their houses, like any other small community that had no electricity. Once electricity came, well, it was a different world. But I remember when I was a kid, we didn't have, if you wanted to make toast, you made it on the stove. You didn't make it in a toaster. So it certainly has changed. And a quieter life, let's put it that way, I think. I don't know, gardening, I guess you would say. I've always gardened. I love mostly flowers. Reading, I read a lot, as you know. And I guess that's it. I used to do crocheting, and I did a lot of sewing when my children were younger, but I don't do the sewing anymore like I used to. My parents were born in Italy. Well, my dad came to Canada when he was 17 years old, and he was on a ship when the Titanic went down. It's in April of 1912. And they didn't know it, but the crew, like the passengers, didn't know this. They were told the next day that their boat got the signal to go to help this boat that was in distress. But there was another boat closer, so they didn't go. But my dad was always interested in any story that was on TV but the Titanic, being that he was so close to it and at sea at the same time. And that was his first trip, but he didn't come to Canada then. He went to Ellis Island, and that's where he went to New York. And from New York, he worked in the States many years, and my dad made 4 trips back and forth to Italy, but it was mainly for work. Eventually he came to Canada and started working in Canada. He was in this area, but he worked in the CPR out west too. He worked in Banff and Calgary and different places. And yes, then he eventually came North Shore here in Thunder Bay. Well, my dad used to tell me about a lot of things that happened on the railroad when, different wrecks and that, and talked about the one at Salem many years ago. I don't even know what year it was when an engine went down there, and he'd tell us I remember that story, but I don't remember the year. My mother always said that my dad brought her into a country that had so much snow, because they got snow where my mother came from too, but it never stayed, because my mother and dad were from northern part of Italy on the Switzerland border. And she always said to my dad, "What kind of a country did you bring me to? It's all bush and snow." But my mother never did go back. She said, one time I said to her, "You should go back for a visit." And she said, "No, I'll never go back. I'll always stay here." So they were happy in Canada. 1st of July was a big thing here years ago when I was a kid. There was bicycle races and clowns and people just went out for the 1st of July. And then there was always a ball game and a dance at night when I was growing up as a kid. And then it just kind of petered out like every other thing. And now the 1st of July, now the Recreation Committee has, I think it's 4 years now that they've, it's hamburger and hot dogs down at the park. It starts at 5 and they have fireworks there. So that is back again, which is nice. Well, everybody's into tourism now. And it's a very short season. When does it start? It starts in June and it ends 1st of September. So it's very short. As far as accommodations, I think in the 50s, and I guess 40s that I can't remember, there was a lot more places to stay. Now we have the guest house, which has 4 rooms. We have the Willows, which is 4, and I don't know what the other places are. But at one time we had cabins here there was 10 cabins in one unit and another 10 in another one, and beside the Rossport Inn. Them days they were filled. There was a lot more tourists here in the 60s and 50s that I can remember. I don't think we will ever bring back the tourists that we had in those days, because there's too many other places now that people go. The North Shore was really, really famous when they opened the North Shore up here. And everyone did the circle route. Fishing was great. There was at least 3 charters that went out here every day. They were booked from year to year. You could ask Colleen, I'm sure she told you about her dad. Her dad was booked from year to year. And they started in 1st of July right to the 1st of September. Every day they were taking tourists out. So it has changed as far as the tourist trade, as far as my opinion. I might be wrong, but I don't see the tourists here today that we had years ago. I don't know. I think people will still spend money if they want to travel. I think it's just the world is small now. They can fly anywhere. Where at one time it was everybody went by cars, and the North Shore was really something when they opened up the North Shore here. So I don't know. Maybe it's people. I think people have other things to do, and the fishing certainly isn't here like it was in the 50s or 60s. Like, I don't see the tourists here today like we did. And the traffic is nothing like it used to be. And there's more trucks, that's about the only difference today. But I mean, if you wanted to go to Schreiber, I know I had to go into Schreiber many times before 10 o'clock to be there for 10 o'clock to go to the bank when I managed the gift store shop. And it would take me at least, I used to allow myself between 20 to half an hour to get into Schreiber, because there used to be so many trailers. I'm not speaking about trucks. I'm speaking about people, campers and that. The traffic was really heavy. I don't see the traffic today like it was then. I enjoyed Rossport. I love it. I've lived here all my life. And it just happened that my husband was working here, or we could have moved many places. But his work was always here in this area. I don't say Rossport. I said he traveled from Rossport to Nipigon to Terrace Bay to Thunder Bay. His work was traveling. He was on the road more than he was at home, but it certainly was a place to bring your children up, and they had a good life in Rossport in those days. I mean, when we closed the school here in 1970, there was 54 children going to school here. They haven't even got that in one school in Schreiber today. And that was from grade 1 to grade 7. 7 and 8 went out of here in 68 into Schreiber. But at one time there was 54 children in the school. Started to bring them into Schreiber by bus in 1970. And my children were always busy. They were always very involved in sports, and they always made their own fun. They weren't sitting watching TV all the time. We did have TV, but they used to have a slide back here that used to come from almost the highway right to the track here, and they were always there in the wintertime. And of course they had their skating rink here too. And the lake. There was always a rink on the lake in the wintertime, so no. And there was, like I told you, there was 54 children here at this school at one time, so there was lots of kids in Rossport them days. It's not like it is today. We're lucky if we get 5 or 6 kids on Halloween now. There is no children